crank it up, let it roll. Stars and stripes in my soul. Steel toes on, boots in the gravel, heartland truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe when we don't talk at all. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. We back the badge, we guard the border. We love our guns and law and order. They try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down, we just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. You can cancel the show, but not the crowd. We're still here, still talking loud. Hand of the free on every spell. Hit that mic, host, let the truth ring out. This is red, white, and raised hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rail from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raised hell.
Visible there. Now I am visible. Good morning. For better or worse. You know, you probably liked it when we did the radio thing better because you didn't have to look. All you had to do is hear. Now you got to put up with what's on the screen. Doing the best I can with it, though. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Happy Monday to you. It is what? The 27th morning of the 7th month in the year of our Lord 2026. And I did it for you. I spent some of my own money so you wouldn't have to. And I went and did something that it's complicated. My relationship with literature is important. My relationship to Hollywood is very, very different, but the two had to intersect this weekend, and I finally went and did it, as you probably saw from the preview. That's how I feel about it. The man with the great left cross there, that's Homer, the classic 3,000-year-old playwright slash poet who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. And that's Christopher Nolan, who bastardized every single thing, well, almost every single thing about Homer's epic. And that little quote that I gave it when I made that little graphic, those who know. Those who know how the indoctrination part of the Odyssey starts, you'll understand what that means. And the second part of that line should be plain to see as well. But I did it for you. So you don't have to. I went ahead and watched the Odyssey yesterday. The wife and I both went, and we had very, very differing views of it coming out, as did my very, very astute and intellectual daughter, who went and saw it down in Tennessee last weekend, on opening weekend. I think last weekend was opening weekend. Anyway, a lot of people loved it. And she read the Iliad and the Odyssey as well. A lot of people loved it. I've got a review coming today. That's what you also probably saw here. We're going to review Christopher Nolan's mangling of Homer's Odyssey. And then the other part of our big stories today is free speech in America. Is it on life support? If you watched, or I should say, if you read yesterday's Sunday morning briefing, which arrived at 11 o'clock, or excuse me, why did I get 11 o'clock? Arrived at 6 a.m. Yesterday morning, you probably know what I'm talking about. There's a woman named Shiloh Hendricks who has been charged with speaking. And not only was she charged with speaking, she was tried for speaking. And after she was tried for speaking, she was found guilty of speaking. And she has been sentenced for speaking. And if that sounds strange to you, in a nation that is revered for its First Amendment rights to speak as we see fit, it should sound strange to you. It should also tick you off. It should also worry you, trouble you, cause great consternation within you, because it does all of those things for me. And we're going to talk about it. The things she was speaking were not necessarily kind, but that's exactly why we have the First Amendment, to protect speech that somebody else might find a little bit unkind. Maybe a little bit insensitive, maybe a little bit mean, maybe even a little bit rude, maybe even a little bit, gasp, offensive. That's what the First Amendment was designed to protect. We're going to get into that a little bit later on the program today as well. So a lot of things to do. And like I said, I would like to start with the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's new epic, but I'm not going to, because there are a couple of other things that are of great importance this morning as well. The bell is ringing for the Haitians in not only all over the United States, but in particular here in the state of Ohio. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, Haitians, it tolls for thee. President Trump said, let's go. We promised we were going to do this. Let's act on this. And there it is. ICE is preparing major operation targeting Haitians who have lost TPS status after the Supreme Court ruling. Ohio is one state that will be heavily targeted, according to sources speaking to Fox News. And we're just going to read a couple of lines here just so you can kind of see what's going on here. This expanded operation is expected to begin as soon as this week. The Supreme Court certified judgment is expected to be transmitted to the lower courts Monday. That's today, clearing the way for the Trump administration to proceed with ending TPS for more than 300,000 Haitians. Ohio will be heavily targeted because Springfield has a large Haitian population. Remember, they're eating the dogs, and they probably were. We know where they were eating the geese for sure. But there were a lot of other witnesses who saw some things that made their way to the president during that infamous line in the speech in June of 2024. Anyway, this is exactly what is supposed to happen. It's the way it's supposed to work. Federal sources told Fox News Ohio will be heavily targeted because of Springfield. Last month, the Supreme Court reversed lower court judgments that had postponed the administration's TPS terminations for Haiti and Syria while litigation continued. TPS was first granted to Haiti following the country's devastating 2010 earthquake. The designation allows eligible foreign nationals from countries experiencing armed conflict, natural disasters, or other extraordinary conditions to temporarily live and work legally in the United States. Look at that word. It's a key one. I'll highlight it. How about that? Temporarily. That's the one that the Democrats absolutely refuse to either learn how to define or to acknowledge has a definition. Temporarily. The anticipated enforcement operation follows President Trump's the Trump administration's long-running effort to end Haiti's TPS designation, arguing the program was never intended to become a permanent, which is, if you look it up in a dictionary or look it up in a thesaurus under antonyms or opposites, is the opposite of temporary. Following the court's decision, White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson called the ruling a tremendous win for the administration. Homeland Security General Counsel James Percival also praised the ruling in a post on X, saying, quote, "The court vindicates DHS yet again. The T in TPS stands for," there's that word again, "temporary. Yet many of these designations become de facto amnesty. This is a win for the rule of law and for common sense." The anticipated operation comes as Springfield remains a focal point in the national immigration debate after the rapid growth of the Haitian community. And we all know about the reason for the rapid growth of the Haitian community in the state of Ohio, because Mike DeWine made it so. Mike DeWine has a really weird, strange, and unusual fascination with and commitment to Haiti and Haitian people. For whatever reason, he is no doubt going to be livid over this. He's probably going to issue another proclamation or another statement or another declaration that this is a huge mistake. If we go through with this clearing of Springfield, Springfield is going to collapse and just fall right into the gutter, because Springfield cannot operate without Haitian labor. You understand that, right? I mean, Ohioans, Springfieldians, Americans, they can't possibly replace the extraordinary work being done by the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. I mean, Haitians are doing work that is like very, very Haitian-like, you know. Americans, particularly white Americans, they can't be expected to do that stuff. The manufacturing plants are going to close. The slaughterhouses are going to close. I mean, what are we going to do if we lose all of the Haitians who have made put it on the map? Now let me pull my tongue out of my cheek while I explain how much life is about to improve for the Springfield residents. The ones who had the guts to tell the truth when this controversy started a couple of years back, the ones who actually said, look, our kids can't learn in school because their classrooms are filled with Haitians who don't speak English, and the teachers are trying to communicate to them, and our kids are sitting there watching things happen and not being able to be addressed themselves. We can't drive down our streets because Haitians who don't know how to drive or read English are crashing their cars into us and into businesses and into poles and everything else. They're not assimilating into Americana. They're not assimilating into American culture. And the people of Springfield, which was only, around a 50,000 or so size population city anyway, having another 80% of that dumped on top of them, it basically just completely changed the demographic and the culture and the lifestyle of the people of Springfield. And thankfully, President Trump kept his promise and pushed forward the Supreme Court signing off on it. Yeah, T in temporary means temporary. T in TPS means temporary. You can start rounding them up and sending them back. And people say, oh, well, there was still a chaotic life waiting for them back in Haiti. I mean, you can't do that. It's still racked by natural disasters, and it's overrun by criminals, and it's overrun by a corrupt government. You can't send them back here. And this is where I always will go back to the bar scene, right? The bar set either the bartender or if there was a DJ on the mic, always announcing at 2 a.m. It's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. You don't have to go back to Haiti if you don't want to. Pick another nation state to flop in and whose culture you want to change. But you're done in this one. That's it. You just can't stay here. So that's huge news. It's going to impact Ohio, obviously, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how it impacts Ohio, and in particular, the Springfield residents who bore the brunt of all of that. And Mike DeWine will probably cry a little bit later today, as expected. So huge news there, and I'm so glad to have that happening. I want to pivot to this now. This is an important one. The DSA. The Democrats, by the way, found their latest DSA candidate. This is they picked a replacement for Graham Plattner up in Maine, and they're sticking with the DSA, which is what Graham Plattner was. And the DSA, by the way, I'm gonna have to make a graphic for this one, just like I did for the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center. SPLC, of course, has been rebranded by me as socialist pushing leftist crap. And that is exactly what they do. And that's exactly who they are. The masking agenda, dividing America, that's SPLC. So I've come up with one. I actually put this in the newsletter yesterday, which was on a whim. Honestly, it's like when I was typing this out, my fingers kind of like, I don't know who they were taken over by, but let me see if I can pull this up here real quick. If you got yesterday's Sunday briefing, Where are you briefing? There you are. There's the Sunday morning briefing. If you got this yesterday, you probably, you know, you know what I'm going to have to do too? I'm going to have to find out how people are consuming the Sunday briefing. Are you reading the whole newsletter or are you just scanning the topics? Because what we are is, you know, a short attention span nation now, a people. We really are. We have very short attention spans. And if anybody gets their hand on an actual newspaper anymore, when's the last time, I'm sorry, I'm going to riff a little bit here. When's the last time you picked up a physical copy of a newspaper? All right. There's a newspaper out here in Lorain County, the only real one left, actually, if you want to call it real one. It's basically, it's in Elyria. It's the Chronicle Telegram. I'll just go ahead and name it. It's the Elyria Chronicle Telegram. They only deliver, I think, 4 days a week. You know, we've had subscription delivery for, you know, I don't know, decades. It's a paper I grew up with. It's a paper in which all of my sports triumphs were in and my son's sports triumphs were in and all of that kind of thing. And so, you know, there's a little bit of a limited connection with it. I wanted to stop receiving it a long time ago. My wife has overruled me on that because she likes to see the physical newspaper, even if she agrees with me that it's mostly crap. Because it's pretty much a couple of local stories and then let's rerun the Washington Post. You know, or Bloomberg or any of the, you know, the wire services. It's just rerunning those articles and editorials and so forth, extremely one-sided and slanted, just like the Plain Dealer, but, you know, with more of a reliance on the Plain Steamer, with more of a reliance on the left-wing papers like the Washington Post and whatever their service is. Anyway, so I flip through a paper a couple of times a week, a physical newspaper here because of that. I cannot tell you the last time I have had in my fingers, in my hands, a copy of the Cleveland Plain Steamer. I call it the Steamer because it's a steaming pile of crap. But when you do flip through a newspaper anymore, particularly because of the content, most of us will look at the headlines, maybe the topic sentence or topic paragraph. If the point of the story or article or report is not clear from the headline, maybe you'll read that first or second line of the actual article. Now you've got the gist and you move on. I think, okay? And I think even if we're not talking about the physical newspaper, most of the online news services, we do the same thing. We will scroll, we may tap Plain Dealer, Plain Steamer, or Cleveland.com, or, you know, if you live in Columbus, I know we've got people who are watching Columbus, people who are watching Cincinnati and other parts of the state, and several other states as well that I've been made aware of. But whatever your local paper is, if you're scrolling it online, same thing, right? You don't really read the articles, particularly longer articles, because our attention spans have just been trained to kind of like absorb the gist of the issue, article, story, whatever, absorb it as quickly and with as little effort as possible and move on. I'm trying to figure out chicken versus egg here. I was going to say it's either what led to doom scrolling, or doom scrolling led to our lack of attention span and led us to only be able to just blip. I want the quick summary. I don't want the article. I don't want the meat. Just give me the little taste, and then move on. All right, that's kind of how we absorb news now because of our short attention span culture. It's the reason I ask all this, of course, is I write this every weekend. Technically, I write it a little bit during the week, just kind of framing it out, and I write it mostly on Saturdays. And I spend a lot of time, my wife will tell you, we don't have a lot of fun on Saturdays because I spend most of Saturday writing this. And I put a lot of time into it, and I read a lot. And because I read a lot, I started to wonder, it's what just literally, this is off the cuff. Are you reading it or are you skimming it? Because if you're just skimming it, chances are you missed the line that brought all of this up, which is redefining the DSA. So I'm just going to run through this. And again, and you're going to see that it is lengthy. Those who already received the Sunday briefing, you already know. what you're doing. For those who don't receive this, please consider subscribing to it. I've got to climb that number of people who are subscribers. I've got a real strong open rate. For those who don't know, it's in the email game or the mass mailing game, the number of people who just delete your email without looking at it, or versus the number of people who open it. So I've got a really strong open rate, but I don't know exactly how many people actually are reading everything that I'm writing. And if you'd like to subscribe, boom, there it is. That's the Sunday briefing. That's the QR code. If you're watching it on a computer screen right now, get out your smartphone and scan that image. Tap it, and away you go. You can just put in your name and your email address. It's that simple. Or you can just email me your name and email address, and I'll add you to the mailing list. Send an email to bob@strictlyspeaking.org, or to my associate and friend and supporter and partner who runs kind of like the actual nuts and bolts of it all, Dan. Send that to Dan@strictlyspeaking.org. Bob@strictlyspeaking.org or Dan and we'll add you to the list. Anyway, it's a long setup because I'm really curious to see how much, if I should continue writing this much, or if I should just write a blurb about each one and move on. Give me a lot of my Saturday back, that's for sure. 5 things to know this week. 1, you still don't hate the media enough, but thanks to Elon Musk, they're at least more aware of how much you do hate them. And that was because of what we did last week. We told you about, and this was, I think, on Friday, actually, Elon Musk's interview with The Economist, in which he took over the interview and basically told her, when she said, people loathe you. He said, I've got a quarter of a billion people who follow me. A lot of people like me. They hate you. They hate you far more than they hate me, you meaning the media. That was just a masterclass. Loved it. Number 2, DTA, don't trust anybody. This is about the 4 Republicans who crossed over and joined the Democrats to kill Trump's ban on trans in the military. Number 3 is basic biology can get you fired. I may talk about this a little bit today too, because we didn't get a chance to last week. A clinical social worker in Oregon fired for displaying books in his office that say normal things like boys are boys and girls are girls. Oh, we can't have that. Meanwhile, they've got all of the trans books all over the library in the schools there. 4, the data center. Is it a far left psyop? A really deep article in the City Journal kind of mapped out how it really may be. And there may be some conservatives who are being roped into opposing the data centers because they are being psyoped by China and by the far left, by the DSA. And this is where I was just typing on Saturday, and it was almost like it was stream of consciousness. My fingers were just and I typed DSA, and then I did the parenthetical that you see there. It's probably more of a coalition of convenience than a psyop. And City Journal, which is the publication that wrote the article, mapped it out. DSA chapter, and I typed DSA, and then I almost did this, like I said, non-thinking. Dumbass socialists and anarchists. It's not artful, but it just came out, and I was like, yeah, I'm leaving it as I bang that out. DSA chapters are leading the fight against data centers in 4 big cities, calling it a pushback against the billionaire agenda. They're turning it into a no ICE thing. They're turning it into an anti-capitalist thing. It's a DSA thing. Anyway, I was just typing, so there you go. If you read it yesterday, maybe you got a chuckle out of it. If you didn't read it because you don't read these things, you just scan for the big red headlines, then maybe you missed it. But anyway, I'm going to have to make a graphic for DSA, the dumbass socialists and anarchists. And by the way, chatters, if you've got any suggestions for what else DSA could stand for, I'm open to it. I'm not married to that's what, like I said, it was almost absentmindedly typed. But then when I saw it, I liked it, so I kept it. But if you've got a better one, if you can put more thought into it, to what DSA can stand for, let me know. Free speech is on life support. This is definitely one of the 2 top stories I will get to this morning. Don't worry about that one for now. The video of the week, look at that. That's my friend Mark. That's Mark King, keeping Medicare simple. What the heck? It's 7:30. Let's do this now. Mark King and keeping Medicare simple. This is such an important phone call for you to make. Listen to me very carefully. Mark is a huge supporter of Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. He is a patriot through and through, and you need to ring his bell. You need to call Mark, and you need to, if you are already on Medicare or if you may be going on Medicare, you need to call Mark. And you need to say, Mark, thanks for supporting Strictly Speaking. It's an important voice. What we do is important to have a platform. Thank you for doing this. By the way, save me money on my Medicare costs. I still have premiums, I still have costs, and I might be eligible for some services that I'm not getting on my current plan. Can you hook me up? And the answer is yes. Mark will hook you up. Mark has been hooking people up for almost 40 years in the Medicare game. All right, in Northeast Ohio, nobody knows it better. There's a phone number here on that banner ad that is on the newsletter. It's 440-832-8936. Write it down, tap it into your phone right now, put yourself a little reminder that says call Mark, and find out as we get closer to the fall open enrollment period, the annual enrollment period, you're gonna want to know what you're doing. And Mark will help you look at your policy, make sure that the coverage you have right now is enough for you and it's not costing you too much, or if there is a better option for you. That's what it is. He won't even charge you a nickel. You get that? He won't charge you for your consultation at all. No fees. Call Mark, 440-832-8936. Mark is good people, and he helps take care of you. The video of the week in the Sunday briefing this week was a replay of my interview with John Lott, which actually ran on Friday because it was really important. We covered three big topics on Friday, including passing the Save America Act, President Trump's, the great job President Trump's deportation and immigration crackdown, the impact that's had on violent crime plummeting through the floor, which was really important. And then the left's renewed calls to end policing in prisons, which I'm going to get to in about 2 seconds. 5 things to do this week. Be mean. Only if you're white, though, because being polite if you're white makes you a white supremacist. We covered this last week. Be mean, because if you're polite, they're going to say you're a supremacist. Okay. Tongue in cheek, of course, but you get the point. Tell Congress to take care of America's veterans. This is about the act that did not get to a floor vote. It should have. And we're going to keep pushing along with our friends at CVA, Concerned Veterans for America. Look at that. That's another good friend. That's Charlie. Charlie is the politically incorrect mechanic. Also prominently featured right there on the Sunday briefing. Get to Charlie's place too. I'll talk more about him later. Don't drink the water. In at least 3 U.S. cities, you might make yourself sterile. Chemical abortion pills are being flushed into the water system, and they are polluting the drinking water. An independent, peer-reviewed study shows that. We could talk about that if you want. Stop or don't start reading USA Today. This is just the latest attack on straight white basketball superstar Caitlin Clark and her fans as being potentially white supremacist or white nationalist, according to USA Today. Don't read that paper. You can read my newsletter, though, and read about what they did. And then save a baby. And this is just Amy Acton. Amy Acton said Vivek Ramaswamy is extreme on abortion. She believes in abortion literally up until the baby takes its first breath outside the womb. She knows a thing or two about extremism, and that's what she knows. And look at that. There's our friends at AFP, Americans for Prosperity. We'll talk more about them later, too. Anyway, that was a long sidetrack because it's what you do when you have ADD. See that squirrel and you chase it all over the freaking neighborhood, forgetting what you were there for in the first place. And that may have just happened a little bit. All right. So I do apologize for that, but where was I going with that? The DSA. I was going to the DSA. So let me share this with you now. This was a tweet that was shared by the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. And it's because he watched with shock and alarm what maybe you saw with shock and alarm yesterday, too, on Fox News Sunday with Shannon Bream. She's the pretty one on the left there, by the way. The other thing is a dumbass socialist anarchist, DSA leader. So that's what this whole thing is about. So Speaker Johnson, let me shrink this down a little bit here. You can read his tweet. Read their platform. Abolish the Senate, the presidency, the Supreme Court, and immigration enforcement. Open the border wide, grant mass amnesty, defund the Pentagon. The barbarians are inside the gate, and the Democrats are welcoming them in. The barbarians are inside the gate. The speaker is spot on. Communism is no longer a far-fetched threat. It is here on our shores. This isn't just common sense versus crazy anymore. It's common sense versus communism. I was so glad to see the speaker feature this on his X account yesterday, because I watched this with shock and alarm too. So the thing on the right, like I said, whose name is largely irrelevant, just know she's one of the DSA, the dumbass socialist anarchists. And Shannon Bream played a little bit of a game with her here. And so I'm going to read you some of the announced or suggested platform items that you and the DSA believe in and say that you think are, should be the standard practice, if you will, for your candidates' platforms in this upcoming campaign season. This is what you want to see happen in the United States. And I'll read one to you, and you tell me whether or not you really believe that's what you want. And that's really what the DSA stands for. And the rest is going to speak for itself.
So we're going to put up on the screen a few of the things that are part of your platform. And I want to ask you, just give me sort of a true or false on these. Abolish the Senate.
True.
Okay. Replace the presidency and Supreme Court as we now know them.
Yep.
Abolish ICE.
Absolutely.
Abolish borders and give amnesty to anyone currently in the U.S. illegally.
As a long-term plan, yep.
Defund the Pentagon.
Absolutely.
Abolish prisons, at least in large part.
Yeah, again, that as part of a long-term program, yeah.
Okay, so no prisons. Government or public ownership of most large corporations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes you just got to let that sink in, let that marinate just a little bit so you can truly understand and appreciate the flavor. No presidency, no Senate, no Supreme Court, no prisons, no police, no borders. No illegal immigration, because no one is illegal. Amnesty for all of those who used to be called illegal, who are here now. I mean, government control and ownership of the largest corporations. Government control of the means of production. Where have we heard that before? Where have we seen that before? How did it work out in all the places we have seen that before? I'm not going to roll through this over and over and over again. Sometimes I do this, but you do recall the difference between socialism and capitalism, right? You remember this? I put this graphic together a while ago. Tale of the tape. Capitalism versus socialism. Capitalism rises or raises, I guess is a better way to say that, raises all boats. It lifts the tide so that all boats, the yachts owned by the wealthiest and the little rowboats owned by the poorest, it gives opportunity for everybody to rise from whatever state they are in to something better. To go from the rowboat to the little speedboat, from the speedboat to the, I don't know boats very well, but it's an old euphemism about the rising tide lifts all boats, right? And it gives everybody an opportunity. Socialism starves people to death. That's it. Don't even need that big of a chart for that. Because everywhere it's been done, socialism and communism, everywhere it's been done, that is the outcome. Death. Between 100 and 130 million deaths in the 20th century. In the last 100 years, just literally 100 to 130 million deaths in a little over 100 years. That's just the reality of it. I'm not going to go through it again. We did almost a whole episode on communism and socialism, and I probably will have to keep doing more of that little by little. Okay? But the DSA, the Democrats, Socialists of America, the dumbass socialists and anarchists believe in so much of that. They think that either they think that it can be changed by doing it differently. hence the D in DSA, Democrat socialism. It's different than regular socialism. Spoiler alert, it's not. Either they think they can do it differently and therefore better, and everybody can actually be okay and people won't starve to death. They actually think that because of their stupidity and their ignorance and their refusal to see what is before their very eyes. Or they don't think that. They know it's going to lead to starvation and they don't care because evil corrupts their minds and their hearts even more than stupidity and ignorance does. So either they know what's going to happen and they don't care, or they don't know that it's all going to fall to ruin, that the entire country will fall to ruin. Either way, they must be stopped. That's why the speaker featured that. You heard her. The people lose what they were gifted in 1776, technically through the end of the Revolutionary War and through the drafting of the Constitution, but the founding of the country that we just celebrated 250 years of, they are moving heaven and earth to destroy. And they make no bones about it. They went on Fox News Sunday and said, yep, to all of those things. No borders. No, oh, I remember when I was trying to, in my head, I was trying to remember everything that Shannon Bream asked her, and I missed one. No military. We don't have to fight. We don't have to protect ourselves. We don't have to protect our borders. We don't have to protect our people. Anything around the world wants to come in, they can. No military. You heard her. No funding for the Pentagon. That's the military. That's the national defense. That's the Department of War. No war, which means no self-defense. That's an outright, abject surrender of America and every principle that this founding was founded upon. So that's the DSA. And those are the candidates who are winning elections all over the country. They're taking over the Democrat Party. And I was so glad. Thank you, Shannon Bream, for exposing that. Thank you, Speaker Johnson and others for sharing that. We're going to continue to push that as well. Maybe save that, clip that part out of today's episode if you want. If you're watching on replay, maybe you can do it right now. Just hit a screen record and record that part of Fox News Sunday and share that with other people. This is what, because a lot of times what they do, those on the left, they try to claim that what we on the right say on shows like this, podcast, live streams, television, Newsmax, One American News Network, Fox, whatever, that we're making this stuff up. We're casting aspersions. We're trying to read or infer things into it that aren't there. Shannon Bream said, no more reading or inferring as to your intent. Let me ask you directly, what is your intention on all of these things? Is this really what you guys believe in? And you saw her, as a matter of fact, she didn't equivocate. She didn't hesitate. She said, well, we're a little bit, lukewarm on that one. We're still considering that. No, it's just, yep, yes, absolutely. Long-term plan, yes. She didn't even hesitate. So there's no, like I said, assumption on our part. We're not assuming. We are listening to their actual words. And Shannon Bream literally just got her to say, this is what we in the DSA are pushing for.
So we're going to put up on the screen a few of the things that are part of your platform. And I want to ask you, just give me sort of a true or false on these. Abolish the Senate.
True.
Okay. Replace the presidency and Supreme Court as we now know them.
Yep.
Abolish ICE.
Absolutely.
Abolish borders and give amnesty to anyone currently in the U.S. illegally.
As a long-term plan, yep.
Defund the Pentagon.
Absolutely.
Abolish prisons, at least in large part.
Yeah, again, that as part of a long-term program, yeah.
Okay, so no prisons. Government or public ownership of most large corporations.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not ambiguous, is it? That's just straight up acknowledgement that this would be a communist nation. All of those things, no borders, no Pentagon, therefore no military, no police, no prisons. So what you just heard was a collection of individuals with no laws or rules or private ownership of anything. You just created Thunderdome. You just created pure anarchy. rivers of blood will flow through American streets. That's it. And the people who survive the nightmare of Thunderdome, they would then be under the boot heel of big government, controlling, again, the means of production and thus the means of distribution. How much you get to eat, how much you get to keep, what you get to do, where you get to go, what you get to say. It's, again, going back to Orwell. You want a picture of the future? Picture a boot heel stepping on an American, or stepping on a person's throat or a person's head. I can't remember the exact line. I think it was the throat. That, or the neck. Maybe it was the neck. That's the future. And that's what they're calling for. That's what anarchy is. That's why, maybe that's why it was almost, like I said, stream of consciousness typing when I typed dumbass socialists and anarchists. I didn't give it thought. I just typed it. But I think it's pretty freaking dead on accurate. All right, before I get into movie review time, and I really feel like this is important, or else I wouldn't be committing the time to it. Let me remind you, I told you I'd talk about him a little bit more, and now let's talk about him a little bit more. This is my guy, the politically incorrect mechanic, Charlie. In fact, I'm taking my son's car to him tonight to get a few maintenance things done. Yeah, that's where you take your car if you want to make sure you're not being ripped off and overcharged. It's where you take your car if you want to make sure it's being fixed and not just band-aided. A lot of places will just kind of like fix the symptom of whatever is causing that knock, but not fix the cause of the knock, just the symptom. They're going to cover that up. Charlie's just great at what he does. Virtually anything with a motor he can fix, and anything with a CPU he can fix. All right. And most cars are big computers now. Go to Charlie. If you're in Northeast Ohio, he's in Lakewood. You can see the address there on Madison. You can find him. But call him up, 216-470-0170. Tell him what you got. If it's a mower, if it's a tractor, if it's a rascal scooter, or if it's your car, call Charlie at 216. I almost gave the wrong phone number. 216-470-0170. Charlie is MAGA. Charlie is going to give you a discount if you're also MAGA, at least by way of these things. First responders, veterans, active military, and concealed carry license holders. If you are one of those things, you get 10% off all of your work at Charlie's Auto Repair in Lakewood. Northeast Ohio, you can't afford to go anywhere else. Trust me on this. Cling to a great mechanic who's honest, and that's what Charlie is. He will make your car great again. All right. Do I really want to do this? I think the answer is yes. Yes, I do. I was so excited, if I'm being 100% honest, I was so excited about the prospect of the Odyssey when I found out they were making a live action Odyssey movie, and that Christopher Nolan, one of the most acclaimed directors maybe ever, was actually going to be producing it. And you started to see a little bit of snippets of trailers over the last year or so. You're like, oh my gosh, I love literature. It's why I was an English major. It's why I was an English teacher before starting a broadcasting career. I love literature. And I love the Odyssey, the Iliad and the Odyssey, the epic poem by Homer, ancient Greek life, 3,000 years ago, ancient Greece. This is what this is about. And the movie, or beg your pardon, the poem, it's an epic poem, but it's a book. It was just one of the most important pieces in I think probably the history of Western civilization. That's what the Iliad, the Odyssey are. Maybe you read it in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. Maybe you even discussed it in college. I did. I was so looking forward to it when I heard about this film being made, that I, to see it in the grand scale of Hollywood production. How can they make the Scylla and the Charybdis look? How can they make the Cyclops look? How will they portray the Odysseus's men turned to pigs? How will they portray, the Lotus Eaters and Calypso? I mean, I can go on and on and on about the specific plots and the various travails, if you will, that Odysseus had to encounter. And you're seeing some of it on the screen right now. This is like part of the trailer of the making of the movie type of thing there. I can't put the audio up, obviously. I don't want to either because I want to talk about it, but try to make it fit the screen there a little bit better. Because I don't want to get a strike for copyright violations, but I can show you just kind of some of the scenery there. But for those who don't like have a working memory of from 9th grade or 10th grade English or whatever, when you may have read the Odyssey, brief little primer here to kind of let you know what we're going to discuss here. And we'll talk about the casting and everything else. But the Odyssey is basically, it's the story of a warrior king. That's Odysseus. Listen, here's the reason I'm doing this part of it. I think it's really, really important to do this part of it. And I don't know what the screen keeps moving for whatever reason. It's just they shot it in this particular IMDb graphic trailer or whatever it is you want to call it. It keeps moving on me. I'm sorry. But the point that I'm trying to make here, let me take it off so I don't get too distracted from it. When you hear my review, you're going to need to hear it in two manners, because it's going to hit you differently depending on which of the two you are. If you are somebody who never read the Iliad and the Odyssey, you're probably going to love the film. If you're somebody who remembers reading the Iliad and the Odyssey, but don't know a ton about it, don't recall a lot about it, you're probably going to love the film. If you're somebody who read it and remembers it and who reveres it for its place among the classics in not American literature, but world literature, Western literature, Western civilization literature, you're going to probably not like the film. That's the best way I can say it. If you don't know much about it, it'll be a nice movie-going experience, and you'll be in awe of the grand scale of things. And all of the big noises and things will happen, and you'll be overwhelmed and yay, that was a good movie. If you like for movies, particularly movies based on, or not based on, but trying to portray classical works of art and literature, you will be gravely disappointed. That's what I'm trying to say. So for those who don't know, in the first camp, who didn't read the Iliad and the Odyssey, or don't remember much about it, let me just give you the brief primer here, okay? It's the story of a warrior king, the king of Ithaca, named Odysseus, fighting his way home after 20 years. Not through like brute, and we're going to talk about this, you know, Odysseus' character isn't like the big, mighty, hulking warrior who can defeat any man. Not through brute strength, but through intelligence and deception and endurance and self-control and guile. That's who the main, you know, the hero, the protagonist is. That's Odysseus. He's not perfect. His pride brings the wrath of the sea god Poseidon, which you would know if you read the story, but you wouldn't know much from watching the movie. His decisions sometimes cost his men their lives, but his cunning is the quality that repeatedly saves him and ultimately restores his family and his kingdom. And these are some spoiler alerts. And again, the movie is based on a book. So if you read the book, you already have the spoiler alert. You already know the outcome. So I'm not going to worry too much about ruining this for you. If you were worried about it, then, you know, maybe this is not the right podcast for you today. But Odysseus ultimately does return home. And when he gets there, he has to test both former friends and enemies. He had to destroy those who corrupted his household, tried to steal his kingdom, tried to steal his wife. He had to prove his identity to, you know, his equally brilliant and cunning and deep thinking wife. In other words, they were really a match made in heaven of the time. Odysseus and Penelope, they're made for each other. He ultimately resumes his rightful place as king. So that's the spoiler alert. But Christopher Nolan, when he made this movie, he kept the names and a lot of the spectacles, but he changed the character and the worldview and the conclusion that made those adventures actually mean something. And that's kind of what I want to talk about here. So like I said in the open, I I went to this movie yesterday so you didn't have to. I spent my money so you didn't have to or don't have to. Um, and I see this with a great deal of disappointment, because I was so looking forward to the live action film. Like I said, anytime you read, I grew up reading Batman comics as a young kid. So when 1989, The Dark Knight, or I'm sorry, not The Dark Knight, just Batman, the one with Michael Keaton, came out in 1989, it's my senior year of college, I was like, oh my God, because the only thing we had at that point was Adam West and, the campy 70s version of the live action Batman and Robin, which was just, stupid and goofy. Pow, Zowie, they made the full feature-length film of Batman, with the dark black bat suit and everything else. And I was just all about it. You get excited when you see Hollywood's going to tackle something that you read about years ago. Now, comic books and Homer's Odyssey, Iliad and Odyssey, of course, are apples and oranges, but you do understand the point, right? When you get a chance to see a film adaptation of something you enjoyed reading, you're all over it. And the enjoyment of reading the Odyssey in particular is something that virtually everybody, again, who's ever taken an English class has had that joy to know that that's going to come to life on the big screen. I wanted this to be a great movie. I was excited for this to be a great movie. I don't know that it became a great movie, unfortunately. And the central problem here is that Christopher Nolan, the great director, who ironically, since I was talking about Batman, ironically gave us the best version of all of the Batman movies through the years. The Batman Begins in 2005 and The Dark Knight a couple of years after that. And then the third, which was The Dark Knight Rises. It was by far the best series of the Batman. I loved Christopher Nolan's movies and a lot of other great ones as well. I wanted this movie to be great. But Christopher Nolan, which is why I kind of created this goofy AI thing here, that's Christopher Nolan taking one to the jaw from Homer. I said, sing to me, Muse, not rewrite me, Nolan. Nolan rewrote Homer, and that's not okay. That's not okay. That's the reason I'm kind of covering this in the way that I am. It's not okay. And I hope I didn't just mute myself. Did I just mute myself? Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Are we good? All right. I feel like I just pushed a button that shouldn't have been pushed, but I can't swear to it. So the central problem here is that Christopher Nolan destroyed Odysseus, not the Odyssey, but the character Odysseus. Let me begin. The single biggest problem I had with this movie is that Christopher Nolan, the great director, fundamentally misunderstands or deliberately rejects the character of Odysseus. Odysseus is not just a guy who gets lost at sea and encounters monsters. You could make a million of those movies, right? He's one of the great warrior kings of Greek literature. Courageous, resourceful, commanding, calculating, cunning, an extraordinary strategist, a problem solver. He's not Achilles. Achilles represents the almost superhuman physical power and battlefield fury you saw in Troy with Brad Pitt, right? Achilles would have been played by, well, Brad Pitt wasn't like, the big muscle-bound, it wasn't Stallone or The Rock or one of the big action stars like that. Brad Pitt bulked up to be the mighty warrior Achilles, absolutely. But you notice the character of Odysseus wasn't played by somebody like that. It was played by Matt Damon, who was very much just average sized, wasn't the best fighter in the history of the world. He again was the leader. He was the champion thinker. He possessed a different kind of greatness. His greatest weapon is his mind. He studies the situation. He deceives his enemies. He adapts. He manipulates. He survives. And when brute force cannot win, he finds another way. That's what he's noted for in the epic. And that is not incidental to the Odyssey. That's the entire point of Odysseus. It's who he is. And Christopher Nolan almost completely removed that. Now, I know most of what you're going to want to hear about is the casting, because when we all saw the rumors online over the last few months, and we heard rumors that Christopher Nolan was casting Ellen Page, who changed her name to Elliot Page and tried to change herself from a she to a he, was going to play Achilles, the mighty warrior that I just described that Brad Pitt played in Troy. We heard that. We said, what? And we said, no way. No, I said it. I texted my daughter and her boyfriend in Tennessee, who is a massive Christopher Nolan fan, huge movie buff, huge Nolan fan. And I texted both them, and I said to my daughter and to her boyfriend, I said, sorry, Nolan, you just lost me. Not a chance in hell I'm going to go see that movie. As it turns out, that was a bit of a hoax online. It went crazy. There have been a million videos and memes created of Ellen Page, who's about 5'1" and 100 pounds, a female biologically, trying to cosplay as a male warrior. There have been a million memes of her in a lot of different roles. One of her as, Rocky IV, but with Ellen Page as Rocky. And it shows Drago coming out and just like exploding Ellen Page. One of Troy, Ellen Page playing Brad Pitt's role in Troy, the role of Achilles, and just a spear to the chest, dead, gone. Because that would be how it would be if this was going to be the Mighty Warrior. As it turns out, it was an internet hoax of sorts. And Nolan probably liked that. It gave a lot of more publicity to the movie in its run-up promotion than it would have gotten otherwise. But a lot of people were freaked out about that. I was freaked out about that too. If it had been that, I don't know if I would have gone, despite my, again, love of literature, world literature, not just English literature, but largely English literature. This is Greek literature. Anyway, I probably would not have gone. But I found out that wasn't true, that Ellen Page played a different character, and she did. And I'm going to talk about the casting in a minute. The casting of a dark-skinned, a really dark-skinned African woman as Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy was described as being blonde and fair-skinned. Helen of Troy was the most beautiful woman in the history of the world, the face that launched 1,000 ships. And they didn't cast somebody who looks like that. They cast a dark-skinned black woman for the purposes, most people believe, of Nolan being able to be eligible for Oscars. Academy Awards require DEI. Academy Awards, you cannot be considered for Best Picture unless you have a person of color and a person who is queer or part of LGBTQ in some way, shape, or form as one of the prominent roles, or the director, or the whatever of the film. They've completely DEI'd the Academy Awards. So most people believe that's the reason Ellen Page gets a prominent role, even if it isn't Achilles. And the reason why suddenly Helen of Troy is a black-skinned woman as opposed to the fair-skinned blonde beauty of Homer's epic. So that's really important. We'll talk about the casting, but that's not the biggest flaw with the movie that I want you to take away from this. The biggest flaw with the movie is that, and I don't know if you want to keep watching this over and over again, if it's still playing. I can't see my screen all the time. Yeah, you're still seeing it. I'm going to give it a rest here so I can just talk a little bit about it. There we go. So the casting issues I'll cover in a minute. In the movie, what really is most bothersome is that Odysseus is no longer principally the brilliant strategist whose guile and cunning accomplished what 10 years of warfare could not. He's guilt-ridden. He's emotionally shattered. He seems ashamed of the very victory that made him legendary. He's ashamed of sacking Troy, which doesn't just change his personality, it destroys the foundation of the story. And that's what I was trying to explain to my daughter. We had a debate. See, they saw it last week, and I didn't even see it yet, but I was debating them on what they had seen based on descriptions of what other people saw when they saw it. And ultimately, my daughter challenged me and dared me. And she said, stop going by what other people say and go see it for yourself. And I said, all right, challenge accepted. I'll do it. And that's why we went yesterday, my wife and I. And then yesterday, afterwards, she called to say, all right, let's hear it. Now that you've seen it yourself, did you enjoy it? And my wife answered, yes, she loved it. She enjoyed it. And I said, the physical, spectacular imagery and the epic brought to life on the high seas and the monsters that Odysseus had to encounter, it was all very visually overpowering. I agreed. It was. That made it very entertaining. And again, if you are a novice when it comes to understanding Homer and the story, you probably looked at it and just said, man, that was great. But if you are somebody who understood the story, remembers the story, appreciates the story, and not just for the story, but for its contribution to Western civilization. If you watched it through that lens, like I said, I wanted it to be great, and it wasn't, because it destroyed that. The Trojan horse, we have all heard of, we talk about it now in politics. Who or what is a Trojan horse trying to bring the enemies inside the gates? We talk about that all the time. What does it mean? It came from the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Trojan War was won when Odysseus took the Trojan horse idea, the original, and again, I don't want to go into the entirety of the plot details, but Troy was impenetrable. The walls of the city of Troy were impenetrable. They had tried and failed again and again and again. For 10 years, they could not penetrate the Trojan wall. So they had to find a way to get inside and open the gates from the inside. So the idea of the Trojan horse was born. It was Odysseus's. The Trojan horse should establish Odysseus's brilliance. The Greeks had been fighting for 10 years. They could not penetrate. Thousands had died. The war had become a stalemate. Conventional military power, gone, done, failed. Odysseus conceives of a strategy that accomplished the impossible. He understood the enemy. He knew about their pride and also their curiosity. And so he used deception to get the Greek warriors behind the walls they could not breach. And then they open the gates from the inside, and in comes the entire Greek army, and the war is over. It was the most brilliant thing ever, giving them this gift of a giant wooden horse as a sign of peace. Oh my gosh, we won, we beat them. Look what they gave us, and they roll it into the city gates on their own, and out come the Trojan or the Greek warriors. I mean, it's a brilliant strategic military maneuver. And Nolan makes Odysseus regret it for 3 hours of a film. Felt bad about it. In the ancient world, which is what this is set in, that would have been celebrated as genius. Like I'm celebrating it now, 3,000 years later, after the writing. But Nolan made him sad and depressed and almost beta, the ultimate alpha, the ultimate general, the ultimate brilliant strategist became a sorry gods, sorry Zeus, I really shouldn't have tricked them that way. I should have just let more conventional warfare happen and let thousands of more people die. Sorry. Turn him into just a sniveling, non-epic hero. That's what I had a problem with. The central core of the whole thing is Odysseus, from which the name Odyssey comes. So in the ancient world, these were warrior cultures, is the bottom line. Victory then brought honor, glory, spoils, and immortality through legend, which is what Homer did. He told the tale and made it legendary. A king who ended an unwinnable war through superior strategy would not have returned from battle sounding like a little beta bitch. Sorry. like he needed a therapist and an antidepressant because, geez, boy, the way I won that, I don't know. Christopher Nolan forces the very modern moral psychology that somebody today in the weak, I don't want to politicize it and say on the weak left, but kind of like that, the soy boy beta type of mentality that is so pervasive in today's culture. He kind of brings that and tries to implant that into the ancient world in which it did not exist. Odysseus is crushed by guilt because he violated Zeus's law by using the horse as a deceptive gift. There is no Zeus's law. It was the theme of the movie, but it was never a theme in the book or in the poem. It turns the Trojan horse from being the ultimate demonstration of brilliance into sort of a Bronze Age war crime. And you can't buy it. I didn't buy it. You can't buy it. If you remember the book at all or the epic poem at all, you don't buy that. Christopher Nolan is asking Odysseus to judge ancient warfare according to the sensibilities of a guilt-ridden modern filmmaker. Everybody has to feel bad about doing things that somebody else might find offensive, such as tricking the enemy in war. I mean, that might tell us something about Christopher Nolan, but it tells us very little about Odysseus, which is what this is supposed to be about. He was supposed to present to us Homer's Odysseus, not his weird modern version of a sad and melancholy. Nolan's Odysseus is probably on SSRIs. Panic-stricken, anxiety-ridden, and depressed. Zeus's law, which Nolan invented in this thing, he didn't invent Zeus, but the whole thing about Zeus's law creates a contradiction that cannot be solved in this movie. Hospitality, xenia, those things absolutely mattered in Homer. They were sacred obligations between hosts and guests and strangers, but that did not mean Greek warriors were forbidden from being warriors and deceiving their enemies during war. The hospitality that was noted for the time, which Homer covered, being overly simplified into Zeus's law and being used to make Odysseus ashamed of the Trojan horse and thus the entirety of the war, that's where he loses the audience of those of us, again, who know what we're talking about and who remembered it and who revered it and who recognize its important place in Western civilization. Later, Odysseus disguises himself. And again, I'm fast forwarding a little bit here, as a beggar, enters his own palace through deception and launches a surprise attack against the suitors. So let me understand the movie's logic. Using deception to end a 10-year war that was unwinnable is a shameful violation of Zeus's law, but using deception to infiltrate a palace, even though it was yours, and slaughter your enemies within the walls is apparently acceptable. Why is one deception, defeating, if you will, and another one cherished and celebrated? The movie never gives us any sort of consistency or coherency in that realm. So that's a problem that Christopher Nolan invented. He constructed the movie around Odysseus's guilt rather than over his cunning and his guile and his superior strategic mind. Odysseus' guilt over violating a moral rule that really didn't exist. And then he had Odysseus at the end violate every single element of that rule by killing everybody in the palace. So that leaves the character and the entire movie without a coherent, message, basically. And that's what I want people to know, without a coherent moral center, because it can shift and change from scene to scene in the film. So there are fragments of Odysseus's intelligence remaining by the end, but the movie never builds the Odysseus character around that strategic brilliance. A lot of I'm going to get specific on some of this. So consider what Homer gives Odysseus. Okay, the original material provides Christopher Nolan with one magnificent demonstration of guile and cunning and brilliance and strategy after another, and Nolan won't use it. But consider what some of these things are. Odysseus identifies himself to the Cyclops when they're trapped in the Cyclops cave. He identifies himself to the Cyclops as nobody, because they can talk to one another. I am nobody. So that when the blinded Cyclops, Polyphemus, cries for help as Odysseus and his men escape, the other Cyclops of the island hear that nobody is attacking him. Nobody blinded me. Nobody attacked me. Nobody is getting away. The other Cyclops, being Cyclops, oh, okay, well, if nobody's bothering you, Stia. It was one of the most extraordinary parts of the deceptive, beguiling nature of Odysseus, the genius of Odysseus. And it was left out. The plan to blind Polyphemus at all, rather than to simply kill him while he slept. It was Odysseus who realized, if we kill him, we're going to die in here, because the giant Cyclops was the only thing big enough to be able to move the giant stone door away from the entrance of the cave. If they kill the Cyclops, they all die inside. So instead of killing him, we have to find another way. Blind him. Now he can't see us, and when he opens that the stone, moves the stone so his sheep can get out, that's our way of getting out. He comes up with the brilliant idea of fastening his men beneath the sheep, so that when Polyphemus is touching the sheep as they go, feeling that they are sheep and not the men who had just blinded him, they would only feel the sheep's wool. They wouldn't feel the men, obviously. Instead, it's just a lame, let's tie some straw to our backs and we'll just kind of walk real low and walk out with the sheep. Nothing about the genius of the idea to get him drunk, the Cyclops, to drink him into being passed out, at which point we can blind him without, getting killed. All of the strategy was just wiped out. And the book was about his strategic brilliance. The poem. On board the ship, the idea of getting his crew to plug their ears with wax as they pass by the sirens. The sirens, you have heard. I've used it on this program and many times, talking about the siren call has been let out. The siren call is the beautiful voices of the sirens, which lure men without ability to control themselves to them, at which point they crash and die upon the rocks. So we got to make sure that the men won't steer the boat toward the rocks. We're going to plug their ears with wax. But he himself wants to hear the sirens. He himself wants to know and experience exactly what has led so many, according to legend, to their deaths. So he has his men tie himself to the mast of the ship, and told them, "You must refuse any command I have to release me." That's just brilliant. I mean, yeah, he could have plugged his ears like everybody else did as well. But then he wouldn't know when it was over. And they wouldn't know when they were past far enough that they couldn't hear the sirens call to make them turn about. Somebody had to be listening. So he tied himself, or got himself tied to the mast. And then once his men saw that he was, because he was screaming, let me go, because he wanted to go. He was being drawn in by the call. And once they saw him collapse in fatigue, I guess, they realized, okay, it must be clear now. He's not yelling, let me go anymore. So that's when they could, again, the strategy was covered ever so loosely in the film, but without, explaining the underlying strategy involved. The way Nolan made Odysseus, it's, I just want to hear it so I can be the first. Said, no man alive has ever heard the sirens, or there was no man alive who ever heard the sirens call. Everybody has died. I want to be the first. That's not what Odysseus was doing. Again, there was strategy there. He conceals his identity again when he reaches home, reaches Ithaca, studies the situation, tests the loyalty of those around him before ever revealing himself. That is, again, just unparalleled. I'm looking for new words besides cunning and strategy and guile and so forth, but I can't really think of other ones at the moment. But Penelope possesses her own, like I said earlier, her own extraordinary intelligence herself. She's been defying and delaying the suitors who are there to take her as their bride, because the point they're trying to make is, your husband has been home in 20 years. He's been gone fighting the war for 10. It's been 10, obviously, for him to come back. And so as the years go by, his son Telemachus ultimately grows up and comes of age, and the suitors are all just filling the palace. And according to the kind of the rules of the day, if you will, they can be there to call on her, to be suitors. And, her hospitality must be extended to them when they come in. And so they spend the time just basically ransacking all of, Odysseus's food and wine and taking advantage of her hospitality. But she is also, like I said, very, very genius. She tells them she will pick one of them to be her new husband because her husband is presumed dead. And that husband then becomes king, by the way, because she's the queen. She'll pick one when she finishes weaving, a burial shroud. But what she does is she works on it all day as they watch. And then when they sleep, she unravels what she has done. It makes it look like the progress is never ending, or is really never being done. The completion is never going to happen. So she's very, strategic in her own right. She tests Odysseus throughout their marriage, through their marriage bed as well. She, there's a test that she gives that only the real Odysseus can pass because he's the one who built it around a living olive tree. I don't want to get into the real minutia here. That's a big part of the story, but the point being, the story is overflowing with intelligence and with tests and disguises and traps and counter traps. And Christopher Nolan made this character more interested in trauma than ingenuity, interested in sadness and guilt rather than celebration of success. I mean, even like I said, even the Cyclops sequence that I talked about, that they didn't use or didn't even include the nobody trick, one of the cleverest and most memorable moments in the entire epic in word, but on screen, on film, just completely denied. He takes a scene built around the hero's wit and reduces it to just spectacle. Look at the size of the eye, the Cyclops. Look at the inverted eye of the single eye in the forehead of the Cyclops. I mean, look at and I get it. And I'll give you a little bit more of the thing here, I guess, again, just to give you something to look at while I'm rambling about this. But I find this really important stuff. Obviously. But other changes, that we have seen that have been noted by some reviewers of this thing, comparing the film with the poem, there are just a lot of major omissions. It's like if somebody made a whodunit movie, a Sherlock Holmes movie, but considered the master investigator like Sherlock Holmes' powers of deduction expendable. Like, what made the Sherlock Holmes mysteries so incredible? His ability to think in ways that nobody else could have. It would be like taking his powers of deduction and gumshoeing through these things and saying, we're going to cut that from the movie. He's just going to solve the problems. It's frustrating. Let's talk now about the unforgivable elevation of a character who doesn't even appear in the book, the epic poem, the tale of the Odyssey, the character of Sinon, who was supposedly a mighty warrior. Not the mightiest warrior, not Achilles, but supposedly a mighty warrior. Being given to a 5'0" 100-pound female named Ellen Page. The casting part of this is what pisses conservatives off. But the introduction of the character into a place where the character did not belong pisses me off. You understand that? Sinon was not in the Odyssey. The familiar story of Sinon, the Greek who remains behind, lies to the Trojans and then persuades them to bring the wooden horse inside, says this is a gift, and persuades them to take the Trojan horse into the city. Didn't happen in the Odyssey. That comes from, famously, like 700 years later, after Homer wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, from Virgil's Aeneid, which is a Roman epic written like 700 years later. Now, it doesn't mean, that Nolan was forbidden from including him, but to make him such a prominent character in a story in which he did not exist in the actual Odyssey is unforgivable. And then to take that person and to cast that person as a female, or actually to cast a female as the male, it cannot be. And the movie cannot be forgiven for that. Christopher Nolan doesn't merely borrow Sinan to help dramatize the fall of Troy. Understandably, that does need to be dramatized. But he transforms Sinan into this enormously important figure. He described at the end as one of the most bravest and mighty warriors and courageous ever. I can't remember exactly the words that Odysseus used to describe him when talking about what he learned from him in the underworld when he went to Hades. But Sinan is transformed into this primary character, again, whose bravery and courage, and one of the most morally significant characters described as this great soldier, appearing to Odysseus in the underworld. That didn't happen in the Odyssey. Think about what happened here. Christopher Nolan omitted or diminished major elements that actually define the Odyssey because it defines Odysseus. You removed so much of that, eliminated the physical presence of some of the major gods. He removed the Phaeacians, the bag of winds, the nobody scheme, Penelope's bed test, and so many other important things, but found ample time. And when I was discussing this with my daughter, and debating it with my daughter, who again was trying to say most people aren't going to judge it based on the epic because they didn't watch the epic, or read the epic. She's not wrong about that. But I said, but for those who did, this is sacrosanct stuff. And she was saying they can't fit all of that into a movie. Otherwise, a 3-hour movie becomes a 6-hour movie. And she's not wrong about that either. But a director has to make choices of what's going to be included and what isn't. And Nolan finds ample time to import a character from Virgil from 700 years later, to reinvent that character and elevate that character into the moral conscience of the movie. That's not streamlining for time. That's replacing more important content with less important content. That's what I have a problem with. I tried to explain that to her. I'll explain it to you. So Christopher Nolan removed the authentic Homeric, is that a word? Homerish, the authentic Homer-generated material that established the greatness of Odysseus and filled the space with his own preferred character and his own preferred message, probably just to try to get an Academy Award. And Ellen Page's casting makes the decision even more indefensible. I mean, truly it is. Selecting a trans person, a female pretending to be a man to play such a prominent role in this whole thing makes the character central to the story in the way that he did. It kills it. It doesn't kill the whole movie. The movie was killed by its own decision making, not by Ellen Page. Ellen Page is totally on screen for like 6 minutes, maybe. I don't know what the number is. Like 2-3 minutes at the very beginning when the character dies, and then during the underworld, probably another 3, 4, 5 minutes, whatever. Ellen Page didn't kill the movie. Nolan killed the movie by killing Odysseus and being what he is, and making strategic decisions on time be devoted to what in the movie. That's what I believe killed the movie. And the fact that the focus was on this non-existent character in the Odyssey, also played by a female, supposedly a brave male warrior. It just was a bridge too far. So nobody's saying that this was politics. We're not, there have been conservative influencers all over the place giving their opinion. Ben Shapiro loved this movie. It's 9 out of 10, I think he said. 9 or 9.5 out of 10. All of the stuff about the casting was overblown, all of the stuff. And, and again, maybe it was. to the extent that I just described it too about Ellen Page, because it's not a prominent amount of time on the screen, but the time on the screen is really important time because it's portraying a character that plays a central role to the whole plot, and that character didn't exist. But aside from that, he said everything else, the visual effects are stunning, and the extraordinary storytelling and blah, 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 blah. He loved it. So I'm not following any, one person's lead. Daily Wire co-hosts Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh also did their own reviews of this. I think everybody has done a review of this, and some of them loved it. Some of them loathed it, and some of them were just pissed off at it. That's my category. I didn't loathe it, but I'm ticked off that what they did to, again, one of the central works probably in Western civilization. It matters when you start to lose the iconic hallmarks of a civilization, you start to lose the civilization. And here's my fear. My fear is there are going to be millions of people who see this movie in the United States and throughout the world, but we'll say the West. The United States, millions of people throughout the United States are going to watch this movie and think they know the Odyssey, and that this is what it was, and this is who Odysseus was. And they're never going to go read the book to see that, no, it wasn't. They're never going to go bother. And they're going to miss out on that important piece of history, 3,000-year-old history, Greek literature. That's a problem. For me, that's a problem. That's one of the things that really just ticks me off. So all of the conservatives who are reviewing this, some of them loving it, some of them being a little bit okay about it, some of them hating it and so forth, it says, or they say that those of us who are reviewing this and being critical of this make us obsessed with politics. I'm not doing this from a political point of view. I'm not doing this through the lens of just politics. The filmmakers made a political choice here in some ways. We just noticed it, and it's a part of the overall evaluation of the film. And by the way, why am I spending this much time on it? You realize this is probably going to get nominated for 12 Oscars. Everybody's going to get nominated. It's going to blow. Not that I give a crap about the Oscars anymore. Most of us gave up on that years and years and years ago because of the wokeness of Hollywood, and especially since they changed the criteria for Oscars. Used to be only five films got nominated, 5 directors, 5 leading actors, 5 leading actresses, and so forth. But then they said, there aren't enough people of color and people of different sexual orientations being represented in all of these things. So 10 nominations in each of those categories. And oh, by the way, if you want to be one of the 10 nominated for Best Picture, you have to have prominent positions for people of color and people of queerness and this, that, and the other thing. So most of us gave up on the Oscars a long time ago anyway. But when that makes filmmakers like Nolan, who's brilliant, ruin perfect pictures, films, so that they could be award worthy, that just throws it over the top. That's politics being played by Hollywood, by the quote unquote Academy, by the directors, and that's not us as fans and conservatives and reviewers or whatever you want to call us. And I'm not a film reviewer. I'm not Gene Siskel or Roger Ebert or who's my favorite reviewer of all time. Probably Jay Sherman. And anybody who ever used to watch The Critic will understand that. But we're just fans of film, fans of history, fans of literature, fans of Western civilization. And all of those things, those senses are being attacked by what Nolan put together here. And that's the reason we're all spending so much time on this, or at least that's the reason I am. So basically what Christopher Nolan left out kind of tells us what he didn't understand about the book, about the poem. Any 3-hour adaptation of the Odyssey is going to have to leave things out. I get it. To my daughter, I get it. I know that. I'm not demanding a page-by-page recitation of the entire poem. That wouldn't be possible. The question is what you preserve when you're cutting things. A good adaptation identifies the essential qualities of the original. It protects them. It condenses the events. And it never loses the protagonist. It never loses who he is and what he is and why he's doing what he's doing, which is what the whole thing is about. But Nolan, what he left out is the gods, Zeus and Poseidon, are discussed but do not appear at all. Poseidon's rage and wrath toward Odysseus is also not fully explained because the Cyclops being his son and what he did to him and why he was going to make that trek home across Poseidon's own seas be as deadly as possible. It was just glossed over. Athena is renewed. That's played by Zendaya, who is one of the it people in the younger generation. Reduced to basically a psychological presence rather than an active divine protector. She's in Homer. It's almost like she's just Homer's conscience. She's the little angel up on the shoulder talking to him about, about things. Not really, though, truly being his protector. Aeolus and the Bag of Winds, completely omitted by the film. The Phaeacians and Odysseus's extended telling of his own adventures are removed, other than what he's telling Calypso on the island. The nobody deception that we talked about. Athena's intervention to end the cycle of vengeance following the suitor's death, that's gone. The fact that Odysseus doesn't stay and rule his kingdom, Odysseus doesn't ultimately remain and stay at the end. He sails away into the sunset, literally describing the plan to sail into the sun's dying eye, or whatever the hell they say about going across the horizon. I mean, all of that. Much of Penelope's own cunning is glossed over and replaced. It keeps all of the spectacular, the ships, the monsters, the violence, the exotic locations, all of those things are there, but it strips away the intelligence, the theology, the cultural worldview, that makes it an epic for Western Civ. This is why the movie can look like the Odyssey and sound like the Odyssey without feeling like the Odyssey. We never go to the middle, to the ancient world. We don't go there. It never feels like we are there. You don't get lost in it the way you do in a lot. Troy was better, as I've said before. A lot of people have said the same thing. Troy was better. Braveheart, I felt like I was in Scotland. That was the epic. That's a true story, though. Well, again, Hollywood adapted. But it kept the nature of the character that he really was. And I felt like I was in Scotland and in England when you watch that movie. That's another epic tale that was retold in live action that was just extraordinary. Mel Gibson's character, all of them. There's so many better ways to have done this than what Christopher Nolan just did. Now, this is a little bit different because it's, it is fantasy, with the monsters and so on and so forth. But if you're going to take a historical writing, whether it be fantasy or real, and you're going to bring it to the screen, bring what it actually said to the screen. Don't change it. So many elements to this. Bottom line is, I wanted this movie to be great. I really did. I didn't get great, unfortunately. I didn't get what I was looking for. I wanted to really feel like I was reading the Odyssey again and seeing what my memory still has in it come to life. And I didn't get it. And I guess, like I said at the very beginning, I said, I went and saw this movie so you don't have to. I spent my money so you don't have to. And I meant it. Give it a pass. Hard pass. It's not worth your time. Let me rephrase. If you don't care about classic history, and obviously this isn't history because it's mythology, the story, but the fact that it was written as part of our history. It was written 3,000 years ago as part of our history. Okay? Or it's written about 3,000 years ago. So it's a part of Western civilization. It's part of our, how about instead of our history, it's part of our culture. If you care about our culture, don't go and see this movie and let it bastardize the work by Homer. If you have no interest in our culture, if you never read the Iliad and the Odyssey, if you don't recall enough about it to care, and you just want to go and look at all of the big noisies and the big wow monsters and wow and yay, he finally wins in the end. If you just want to have a movie experience like that, have at it. But based on the things, like I said, that I think are important here, which is keeping true to the historical nature of the literature, and it not doing that, give it a hard pass. I welcome any other thoughts, by the way, and I hope this makes its way into the comments. I didn't even, obviously, I've been just trying to do this for the last 30 or 40 minutes, give you my full review of this, because people were asking when I told them I was going, so I had to deliver this. But I haven't been able to look at the chat, and I'm not going to have time to now because I still have another story to cover. But in the comment section, if you're watching this on replay, in the comment section, give me your thoughts if you saw the movie. Tell me if you did not see the movie, if you're gonna or not, based upon what you've seen on the trailers and based on what you've seen by reviews from, actual movie critics to political influencers online or whatever. And let me know what you think of, if you already saw it, what you think of my analysis of it. Like I said, I wanted it to be great, and in many ways it was from a visual appealing standpoint, but you bastardized the story that Homer wrote, and here's what I hope happens. That's why I created this too. That's what Homer does to Christopher Nolan. Sing to me, Muse, not rewrite me, Nolan. That's what happened here, and that's not okay. All right. The other story that I want to get to, I told you, is the two-parter here, as you can see. I wanted to review the story of the Odyssey, the bastardization, the mangling of Homer's Odyssey, and then I want to talk about free speech in America and whether or not it still exists or if it is on life support and is near death. I'll get into that part after I remind you about our friends at AFP, Americans for Prosperity. We're working so hard. AFP is working hard. I am partnering with them and working very, very hard to do what it takes to protect and preserve and save this republic. AFP Ohio is working so hard to get Ohio conservatives elected to prominent positions to make sure that we do not become a failed blue state. And that's where we are. Vivek Ramaswamy has a massive challenge here in the form of Dr. Lockdown, Amy Acton. We cannot allow this state to turn blue or this state will be lost. John Husted has a race against Sherrod Brown that quite literally might be the difference between the majority and the minority in the United States Senate. This one race. We cannot give that seat back. And that's why AFP is driving people to help. We've got 100 days now. We're 99 days from the election. And we've got 99 days that is a sprint, not a marathon. We've got to get out there and knock on doors. We've got to stuff envelopes. We've got to be influential volunteers. So we want you to volunteer with AFP Action. I want you to go to a website called afpaction.com. See what you can do to become a citizen advocate to make a difference in getting our elected officials elected or get those who are incumbents reelected, or to change and flip some seats that are flippable so that we can indeed ensure that Ohio does not become blue and that the United States does not cease to exist as a republic. If we lose the majorities, that is the fast track we will be onto. So help us. afpaction.com. That's afpaction.com. All right. The other story I wanted to talk about today, and there are actually about 3 or 4 more others, but given the clock, we've got about 17 minutes or so to go. I want to go ahead and hit the other one that I put on the graphic at the top, which is the story of our First Amendment rights. I'm trying to find it now so I can bring it up. There it is. This is the story of Shiloh Hendricks. Shiloh Hendricks, let me see if I can show you a picture of her. There she is. That is Shiloh Hendricks, and she is holding her toddler child. She's on a playground, as you can see. Why is she in our news? She is in our news because she was the individual involved in one of the most blatant, egregious violations of the First Amendment I think I can remember in modern history. And where did it occur? It occurred in, of course, Minnesota, the People's Republic thereof. Minnesota, as you know, has become almost ground zero for all things DSA, for all things radical, for all things anti-ICE. Minnesota has become essentially worse than New York, worse than California. It's become almost a communist state of its own. So I'm going to say a few things about Shiloh Hendricks. I'm going to tell you the story, but it's really important that I start the story with, I don't necessarily like Shiloh Hendricks. I really don't. I don't like people who use the N-word. And this story is about the N-word. Okay? She used the N-word, the full word, hard R at the end, not the soft A at the end that you hear in a lot of language and lingo, but the hard R, the kind you hear in certain movies and in rap music. That's about it. And that's only used then by people who are black. People who are white are never allowed to use the N-word. Even the A, ending in A word, they're not allowed to use it. I'm not even allowed to use it just in discussing the use of the word. That's something I wrote about also in the newsletter, in the Sunday briefing. Let me pull that up again real quick. And in fact, I can read this to you so that I can underscore a little bit about the more, the larger points that I want to make about this. This was number 5 here on my 5 things to know this week. There she is again. There's her child. Our entire society has beaten it into our heads for decades. The N-word is off limits, even in scientific and sociological discussions among academics discussing the history of the N-word or promoting its cancellation. The word is never to be uttered except in rap songs. Again, I wrote this Saturday. Violators of that have felt the wrath in many different forms, from public admonishments to personnel file strikes. Use the N-word at your job, you're going to get something in HR if not fired, to being physically beaten, physical assaults. And it's okay. It's a part of the culture that says black people can beat you into a coma if you use the N-word. That's what it has become. But until now, at least the First Amendment still protected people from criminal punishment for using a word that most everyone, oh, I have a typo there. Look at that. I wrote every instead of everyone. Sorry. I don't have a proofreader. I just write. I'm the proofreader. And I missed it. That most everyone finds offensive. And that's exactly why the First Amendment was written. It wasn't written to protect niceties or compliments or poetry. It was written to protect people who said words that other people, especially the government, might find objectionable, including or insulting or offensive. And that would include the N-word. Apparently, that First Amendment is now in jeopardy. And then I give the brief synopsis of the story here. In Rochester, Minnesota, Shiloh Hendricks, mother of 2, went viral last April after an 8-year-old boy grabbed something from her diaper bag. Not her child, an 8-year-old stranger, an 8-year-old black boy, grabbed an applesauce pouch from her diaper bag. And she responded by using the N-word. First at the boy, which again, that's why I said I don't like Shiloh Hendricks. This isn't about her likability. This is about her legal culpability, however. That's what the story is here. Because I think it's disgusting that she used the word at the boy. It's also disgusting that the boy didn't know better that at 8 years old not to steal something from somebody else's bag. But it's a reaction that was not appropriate, clearly. But then she also used the N-word at somebody named Sharmak or Sharmakeh or something Omar, who's a Somali national. Naturally, it's Minnesota, who started filming it and confronting her about it. So she called him the N-word as well. Again, she's not a nice person. A jury deliberated for 9 hours and split its verdict. She was not guilty on the count of disorderly conduct tied to the child. So in other words, it was okay that she called the child the N-word, but she was guilty on the count of disorderly conduct for using that word with the adult. So she was convicted, fined $1,000, and given 200 hours of community service, a year of probation, and a suspended 90-day jail sentence that could be reimposed if she doesn't meet the terms of the probation. And for what? Throwing a punch? No. Blocking a sidewalk or a road? No. She was sentenced for words. The conduct the state prosecuted was speech. A jury decided a citizen can be fined and threatened with jail time and put on probation by the government for words in a public park without touching anybody. And as I wrote here in the newsletter yesterday, the word was inappropriate, ugly, and unnecessary, especially given the circumstances. We should not like Shiloh Hendricks, in all honesty. I don't. But necessary or not, likable or not, words are not supposed to land people in jail or on probation with guilty verdicts. We made that clear nearly 250 years ago. And why it's changing now all of a sudden is a mystery, a dangerous, potentially nation-killing mystery. So that was my description yesterday, and maybe that's good enough for today as well. But I do want to expound upon it just a little bit, and I want to use some of the words covered in the story by the Daily Wire, and quoting the city attorney as well as the defense attorney for Shiloh Hendricks. The Rochester City Attorney Michael Spindler Crage charged Hendricks with those 2 counts of disorderly conduct. Again, one for her use of words to the child, one to the adult. The man who recorded the confrontation, this Somali national, by the way, is no saint. Does it matter in this case or not? I guess it's a matter of opinion. But he's no saint. This is an individual who was previously charged in a sexual assault in that jurisdiction involving a 16-year-old girl. Prosecutors later dismissed those charges, quote, in the interest of justice, end quote. Sexual assault, 16-year-old girl, charges dismissed. Use of the N-word in an unfriendly way outside on a public park, charges brought, prosecution held, conviction achieved, punishment and sentencing handed down. Make some sense. According to the criminal complaint, again, the confrontation began after the 8-year-old boy took an applesauce pouch from Hendricks' diaper bag. Both Hendricks and the boy's father chased the child as he climbed onto playground equipment in an attempt to get away, and then Hendricks shouted at him and used the racial slur. While recording on his phone, Omar asked Hendricks why she called the child the slur, told her that the boy was autistic. Hendricks replied that she used the word because he acts like one. Again, don't like Shiloh Hendricks. That's pretty racist and pretty bad. But I'm not saying you should like her. I'm saying she should not be thrown in jail or put on probation or forced to do community service for First Amendment protected speech, which is what all speech is that isn't threatening or trying to incite violence. That kind of speech can indeed be punished. If you say, I'm going to go in and assassinate the president, you are now in violation of the law. That is not protected speech. If you scream in the middle of a crowded mall food court, gun, there's a shooter, and create a panic that hurts and injures people, that's actionable. But that's not what this was. This wasn't incitement to violence. This wasn't a threat. This was an angry woman using some words she shouldn't have used in public that should make her people say, what's wrong with you? And you're a racist, and that's disgusting. Don't use that language. He's only 8. We can say that. But to say, you're going to go to jail for that, it's putting us on the verge of becoming the UK. In the UK, they are arresting people for shouting anti-Muslim words in areas of London and in England and across the broader UK. They're arresting people if they're saying something about the Prophet Muhammad or saying something about Muslim tenets or Sharia law or whatever, anything that they want to prosecute them on, they're arresting them, locking them up. That's not a free society. That's why number 1 on the Bill of Rights is freedom of speech. And that means, again, freedom not of flowery speech or nice speech, but speech that somebody else might not like. You only have true freedom if you have the freedom to not have to check yourself because somebody else might not like it. Hendricks' attorney said, I think it's pathetic. Brian Carolus is his name. I think it's sad and I think it's sick. This is a fraud upon the community. He said the government was prosecuting a young lady for language. He's correct. And that the trial was the result of what we thought had gone away a couple of years back, cancel culture. He said Hendricks' choice of words was inappropriate, but there is a difference between inappropriate and illegal. And indeed there is. The prosecutors said the jurors should consider both Hendricks' conduct and her language. The National Association of Advancement, the NAACP, set up a GoFundMe for the child and raised, are you ready for this? $340,000 because the child heard the N-word. Let that marinate for a moment. $340,000. I wonder if there was a GoFundMe set up for the family of the murder victim in Texas. I wonder, we know there was a GoFundMe set up for killer, Carmelo Anthony, but I don't think that Austin, who's, I'm sad to say, his last name is escaping me now, but Austin Metcalf, I think it was, Austin Metcalf. If they had set up a GoFundMe for his family because their son was murdered, I wonder if it would have raised $340,000. You got over $600,000 for the killer. I wonder. The Shiloh Hendricks case is it's pretty clear cut. She was arrested, tried, convicted, and sentenced for being a white woman using a bad word. There is not one single word that a black adult could have called an 8-year-old white child that would have resulted in charges. Can you think of one? If a black adult had called a white 8-year-old child the same word that Shiloh Hendricks was just convicted of using, would there have been charges? You know the answer as well as I do. Not a chance. If a black adult saw a white 8-year-old steal a pouch of applesauce from somebody else's diaper bag and run, and called that child the N-word, which wouldn't make a ton of sense, obviously, but considering so many in the black community call themselves the N-word, they call one another and their friends, they use it as a term of endearment. What's up, my N-word? You know, and then of course they use the hard R in a lot of the rap music, and obviously it's pervasive in a lot of movies and so forth. It's okay in those contexts. But if a black person had used that word against a white child, the same word, which was being prosecuted, being punished as being so offensive that it rose to the level of disorderly conduct. If a black person had used that word against a white child or anybody else, there is no arrest, there is no charge, there is no conviction, there is no punishment, which means Shiloh Hendricks was punished for being white. And the First Amendment has just been beaten to within an inch of its life. This will be a precedent. If you can be convicted of disorderly conduct because of language, because of a word, again, not the kind that tries to incite violence, not the kind that pushes, the bounds of I don't like that president to I'm going to threaten to kill that president. You know those things. You know those are well established. But if you're just using a word that somebody else gets offended by, when and where does that list begin and end? What list of words? Because I promise you, the N-word won't be the only word on it. Next time, it's going to be probably the F word, and not the one that starts with F and ends in K either. Not the one that rhymes with duck. It's going to be the other F word, the one that rhymes with maggot. Because the LGBTQ people have already decided that that word is the new N-word. It shall never be uttered by any. And if someone does, well, you saw what just happened to Shiloh Hendricks. Offense was so great that it rose to the level of disorderly conduct. Watch and see. What other words might be on that list? Chatters? What up? Wow. I just looked down at the chat on my small screen. Let me pull it up on the big screen. What a great question by Lois Irene. Can a biracial person say it? A black person can say it, a white person cannot. What if you're part of both? What if you're biracial? Are you allowed to say that N-word? That's a prime comment right there. That's good stuff. Lois Irene, thank you. Let me scroll up a little bit here. A lot of people are still talking about the Odyssey, which is good. That's fine. But I want to just get to the comments about this. Let's see. Okay, they're still on that. Oh, here's Charlie calling it. It's the word that must not be named. That is exactly correct. Even again, even in the context of discussing, okay, the N-word, if you're an academic and you're discussing, the N-word was first heard and blah, blah, blah. It owes its origins to this, to that, or the other. Okay. And I don't even know the answer to that. And I love a good origin story. My family makes fun of me all the time. I like to know how things began. You know, I did an AI search last week just because my brain just, whatever, it's weird. I wanted to know how surnames started. You want to know why? In part because of people like Homer, one-word names, Homer. And in the Greek life, one-word names, Odysseus, Aeneas, Telemachus, whatever. Temeculus, sorry. And then the Bible, Moses. It wasn't Moses Smith. It wasn't Kane Johnson or Methuselah Thomas. I wanted to know where surnames came from and how they got started. And I started looking it up. And it's fascinating, by the way. How it started basically was kind of what you became known for. People called you that. You know, if you became known for, I don't know, great carpentry, you might be Thomas the Carpenter. And eventually they started dropping the and you were Thomas Carpenter. And that's how your surname was born. So that's just one example, by the way. It's fascinating. I love a good origin story. I don't know the origin of the N-word. I would like to know. I would like to look it up on this podcast. I'd like to know right now, if I shared my screen and did a search for origin of the N-word and spelled out the word, can I even spell it without getting hit? Somehow, some way, with a strike or be targeted or whatever. If I spelled out the word on screen right now, what is the origin of the word N-I-G-G? And can I spell it the rest of the way now, or am I going to be targeted? All right, enough space has been granted now between the last G and now ER. Maybe I can do it that way. How ridiculous is it that I'm afraid to look it up? Or else someone will have accused me of using it. Should I do a little thought experiment here? Should I share my screen, pull up a search window, and ask what the origin story is behind the N-word? I'm looking at some of the comments here. Depends on, is the biracial person black enough? Depends on, are they black enough to say the N-word? Can't say mulatto anymore. That is true too. I want to know. Charlie says Nigeria. I was going to say Nigeria or Niger, probably being the source or the origin in terms of location of where it probably came from. But I mean the origin of the word as a slur. Was it first uttered by one slave owner in the transatlantic slave period? Was that it? Did somebody take Niger and Nigeria and abbreviate it or push it out to the N-word? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna share my window here. I'm gonna bring up. Oh goodness gracious! I'll use Brave. I'm gonna use Brave, which is my browser, because I don't use Google ever. And I'm gonna share this screen with you, and we're gonna do this. And we're gonna do this in the interest of finding out what the real origin is, and then how it's perceived. All right, searching the web. Oh, it says private search. I don't care if it's private or not. I'm just going to do it like this. Right. What is the origin of the N-word? And I'm going to do that because I don't know if I want to run the risk of, if I type what is, are you seeing this? I got to make sure you're seeing this, or else I sound stupid right now. Okay. I'll blow it up a little bit larger. What is the origin of the N-word? And if, again, we're doing this in the interest of science here and study, what is the origin of the word N-I-G-G? And just in an abundance of caution, I'll do that. Okay? See what we get. Okay. It's in Wikipedia. How about that? As it's spelled out that way. And this is Brave's AI response. Okay. The word N-word originated from, are you all still seeing the screen? Oh, you're not. Hold on. Sorry. That opened up a new window. So that means, or a new tab, so I got to do that. Okay. So this is the result from the Brave browser. The word N originated from the Latin adjective niger, meaning black, which evolved into the Spanish and French words. Are we allowed to say the Negro word now? Honestly, and how freaking ridiculous is it that we're talking about this in such fear? Because you're not allowed to call a person a Negro anymore. Are you allowed to just say it in analytical discussion like I am right now, not with an intent to offend? It entered the English language in the 16th and 17th centuries as, and you can see them there, I'm not even going to try it, Negar, Neegar, Neger, likely representing a phonetic mispronunciation of Negro. Originally a relatively neutral descriptor, the term took on a derogatory connotation from the mid-18th century onward, becoming an overt racial slur by the mid-19th century. It was used to dehumanize enslaved Africans, distinguishing them as property and reinforcing stereotypes of inferiority during the era of slavery. The variant Nigga, the soft A, which is apparently okay for Black people. The ER is okay for Black people. It's just that if a white person utters it, forget it. Within African-American vernacular English, it has undergone reappropriation, often used non-pejoratively as a slang term for solidarity or familiarity, particularly within hip-hop culture, which apparently is okay, though its use remains highly controversial and context-dependent. And there are a lot of other results there that you can see. Origins and history from a number of different sites. All right. So even again, in the interest of learning the origin, I'm looking to understand, not to offend or to titillate or to, in some way spark a problem here. I can't say it. But like I said, what happened to Shiloh Hendricks, and I don't like her. I've made that clear from the first till now. I don't like her. I don't like people who use that word. But to criminalize it and throw somebody in jail for using it, they're already going to pay a social price. Shiloh Hendricks is not going to be able to go anywhere without being known as the white girl who calls little 8-year-old Black boys the N-word if they steal a package of applesauce from her diaper bag. The reputational harm is going to be bad enough, but to have criminal prosecution and criminal sentencing too. Again, flipping it around. If a white kid had stolen the same thing from a diaper bag owned by a Black person, the Black person said N-word, come back here or whatever, it might be odd and it might be inappropriate. It might be what the heck's that about, but it isn't going to be criminal, which means that technically Shiloh Hendricks was prosecuted for being white. That is going to be a problem. And that is going to be all the time that we have. We went a little bit over time today, but I feel like the content made it worthy. I want to thank you for your attention. I want to find out, by the way, who's going to go see the Odyssey after my review. Hit me up in the comments. Tell me what you think about what they did to Odysseus's character, what they did to Homer's epic. Tell me if this is a fair representation of what Homer's response would be if he saw this film adaptation to Christopher Nolan. I asked AI to create something for me, and that's what it created, and I'm pretty happy. I said, give me an image of Homer smacking Christopher Nolan in the face for bastardizing his work, and that's what it gave me. And I think that's actually pretty good. For AI purposes, that's pretty good. But give me your comments on the movie. If you saw it or didn't see it, are you going to see it, and why not? Give me your thoughts on my analysis of it. I'd very much like to engage you in the comment section later on. If you're watching this on replay, obviously it'd be a lot easier. And even if you're watching it live, if you're in the live stream making your comments, take those comments and transfer them to the comment section. Okay, that's where we get a good back and forth going even when the show is off offline. Okay. And then also, while you're on it, tell me about the Shiloh Hendricks case too. Is free speech dead? Is the F word that rhymes with maggot going to be next on the, if you say it, we can prosecute you in a court of law? I say it is. If you think it's a different word, let me know what you think it is. That's the one I think is probably next on the block. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. So hit me up in the comment section. Please don't forget to give me a thumbs up, like. Don't forget to hit follow, hit that notification button so you know when we drop new shows and new content, please. And don't forget to follow me on social media, strictly speaking, everywhere. Excuse me, strictly speaking, Unfiltered on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and of course, Rumble. Thanks, everybody. Be well, be safe, and stay free to the extent that we still are. See you next time. Bye-bye.